Last week, we started a series called Filtered. And so the idea of this idea of Filtered is that on your phones, you can take pictures and you can choose filters. You can choose in order to look good, you can decide, do you want to go black and white? Do you want to zoom in? Do you want to zoom out? Do you want to take yourself out of the picture and make it about your kids? Or do you want, you can even delete photos. But this idea of filtering is we live in a world where we post things and we put filters on it and we put the right caption on it, all really mostly for one purpose, is to get more likes, to get more comments, because we care what people think. And what I've noticed is, let me backtrack. Last week, the message was on people pleasing. How we filter ourselves, we try to make ourselves look a certain way because we want to please people. We don't want to disappoint. We want them to see us a certain way. We want to look successful. We want to look like we have our marriages together. We want to filter our lives so that the world sees it a certain way. And sometimes we do it for a specific person. Like we have there's one or two people that have incredible power over your life. Like you are, in the back of your mind, you may not even realize you're doing it. You make decisions on whether they will be happy with it or not. And so we live in that. And I was going to move on to the next message, but I realized as I was praying and thinking this through is how much people pleasing is an idol in our life. How much weight it puts on us. How much. I was listening to Rick Warren 2 weeks ago, and he was talking about people pleasing. And he says, there's so many people who spend all of their lives trying to live up to the expectations of everyone else that they never truly get to live the way God designed them to live. We're always trying to please this person and this person, and we have anger or frustration or angst when someone doesn't like us or we didn't live up to it. And some of us maybe you have felt like you have had someone in your life that you could never please. Never, like your whole life, you've tried so hard. You have had good enough grades. You got your job because you wanted them to be happy with you. And no matter what you do, you are never enough for them. And I don't think that's of God. I think that's a weight you don't have to carry because God has come to set us free. And I didn't want to move on past this idea of people pleasing until we kind of lean into how do we get free? How do we live different in this season? And so a few weeks ago, Pastor Jeremy, Aiden, and I went hiking in the Adirondacks. And one of the things that you notice in the Adirondacks, if some of you vacation there, some of you drive through, is how beautiful it is. There's so many different scenes, so many different ways to. So one night we go out because when you're not around cities with all the lighting, you can look up. And all you see is stars. The sky is filled. To me, it's like it's the fireworks before fireworks were created. In fact, for some of you probably should do those fireworks because you don't do the other fireworks very well. Like, you're dangerous with it. But it's like, God is like, do you not see the skies? Why do you? Fireworks are great, but here's this. But you ever tried to take your phone out and try to take a picture or a camera, take a picture? It never does it justice. You can't get it. And even if you could get it, it's never as good. No matter what filter you put on it, it will never be good as the original. And so then we climb a couple high peaks, and on some of these high peaks, you can go 360 degrees. And there's a view all in every direction. Beautiful view. The sky was like crystal blue. There's lakes on one side. There's like high peaks on the other side. The trees are all green. And what I also realize is that you can go up on that high peak almost every day, and you'd probably see something different. And it'd probably be a different experience because that's how God doesn't just create one artwork. Like it's dynamic. Does that make sense? It's like it's beautiful. It's differently beautiful every time. And I took out my phone, I took a picture, I posted some of those pictures, and it still does not do it justice. Doesn't matter what filter I put on it. It is the original is better than any filter. And what I want to tell you this morning is that you may think you need to filter. You need to put an image on. You may need to look a certain way. But if we are living life connected to Jesus Christ, your filter will not do justice to who God really designed you to be. The real you is more beautiful than you could ever picture. What I'm saying is, we don't need to wear filters. God has created us just the way He designed us, and we need to live underneath that freedom rather than the enslavement of trying to please the next person, the next person, the next person. Let me give you, just in case some of you are in here and thinking that you're not a people pleaser, I just wanted to give you some ways it shows up, all right? And you can cross it off. You can say, this is not for me, or this is for you. But here are some ways people pleasing shows up in our lives. Consistently overcommitting. Let me put it this way. If your schedule's overbooked, or you have a conversation with someone do you think we should do this? You might be a people pleaser. Complimenting others out of sense of obligation. You tell them what they want to hear. Shading the truth and refusing to state my true feelings. Failing to set boundaries with others. Do you know what that means? Like people step into your boundaries, but you're afraid to say, hey, that's a little bit too far, because you don't want to offend them. You feel constant pressure to live up to something. Obsessing over how I appear and how others see me. You often back down from arguments. In fact, you're a people pleaser. You don't even want to get in the argument. So once you hear anything coming up, you back away. And I'm not saying that you need to get in arguments either. You don't address conflict. You go out of your way to make people happy, even at your own expense. You take little time for yourself. You have some one-sided relationships where the other party seems to gain more from you than you from them. Saying no is difficult, and you rarely do it. There's others. And I want to kind of paint a little picture. And to give up people pleasing does not mean that you say what you want to say, you do what you want to do, you have no love for people. You know what I mean? I've met people like this. I don't really care what you think anyway, so I'm going to tell you off. I'm going to tell you exactly how I feel because you don't. And it's not what we're talking about either. What we're talking about is, as we're a follower of Jesus Christ, we want to do it His way. And Jesus is a great way to see the way we're designed to live this idea out. He was someone who didn't please people, but He loved people. He didn't bow before the expectations of somebody else, but He lived and He saw people and He stepped into their world. Let me just explain, because that's what we're leaning into this morning. I was thinking, Jesus did this perfectly. Why not look at Him and say, Jesus, help me to live that way? And so, Jesus, let me give you a couple examples. Jesus, one time, He had His disciples around Him, and he was doing a lot of things. And the scripture says that people were just coming to Him. They were lined up outside the door. There was crowds. The church was full. And he gets away. I need to spend some time in prayer. I need some time, just me and my Father. So He leaves, and they get up in the morning ready to go, ready to get the ministry going. And they come out to Jesus and say, hey, Jesus, the crowds are ready for you. You need to get going. There's some healing we need to do. There's some preaching you need to do. There's a revival's about to start. And they're putting the expectation, and the people are putting expectation on Him. This is what you need to do. And Jesus says, no, that's not why I have come. I have come that others may hear about me too. And so do you understand? Even Jesus didn't please everyone. In fact, one of the times, there are some people that came up to Him and said, hey, Jesus, can you show me a miraculous sign? Hey, I'll believe in you when you show me a sign. Now understand. He had fed the 5,000. He had healed some people. You could look back at the stories that were being told about Him, and He had done this, and they're like, hey, just give us one more and I'll believe. One more and I'll believe. And honestly, there's some people that are like that. That no matter how many times God shows up, that they still may not believe. But Jesus says, no, I'm not going to give you a sign. I've given you signs. And there's a sign coming when I'll be raised from the dead. And then He goes into the temple, all right? This temple is the place where the people of God worshiped, where the Pharisees gathered, where the leaders gathered, where the spiritual people gathered. He walks in, and the people-pleasing side of Him could have said, yeah, let's not stir anything up. It is what it is. And He goes in and he flips tables. He says, this is not the way it should be. He speaks to the Pharisees, who He loves. And he corrects, and he's harsh sometimes. Jesus was not someone that everyone was exactly pleased with. Oh, here's another one for you. There's a story in John chapter 5, and there's a pool, and what would happen is people would gather around the pool who had various sicknesses. You know, they may have not been able to walk, blind, because they thought that when the pool stirred, they could get in. If they were the first ones in, they'd be healed. The story goes, the way it's written is, there is someone that Jesus had a plan to heal, and he's kind of stepping over the other ones. There were hundreds of people at the pool, and he's like, no, you. Now, do you want to be healed? Do you not think that the other 100 people wanted to be healed? No, they wanted to be healed. But Jesus says, I'm not here to please people. I'm here to do one thing. I'm here to do the will of my Father. So how do we walk that? How do we get there? Because it's such pressure for us. And it's over in Matthew, I believe it's chapter 4, and I think the scripture might be on the screen. This is before Jesus starts his public ministry. This is kind of like at the beginning stages. He had spent 30 years as a carpenter, and now he's starting to step into what his next calling was. And before he does anything on the healing side or the other, do we have that, Aiden? Maybe it's chapter 4. This is what it says. When Jesus heard that John had been put, hold on. This is, oh, here it is. It says, he's getting baptized, and the voice from heaven says, "This is my son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased." So there's voice talking to Jesus, talking to the other ones. Do you know where he starts with? He starts with identity. He says, if you want to stop pleasing people, you got to start with who you are. And this is what it says, you are my son. He talks to Jesus, says, before Jesus has done anything. Now notice that he hadn't healed anybody. He doesn't have the disciples quite yet. He may not have had the crowds yet. He says, I want you to know who you are. You are my son. And it does not change whether you do a lot of great things or not. You are my son and my daughter. See, what happens with people pleasing is we become who people expect us to be. And so we identify us as a failure if we feel like they feel like we're a failure. As someone who's ugly if they see us as ugly. As someone who has a terrible job if they see us as someone who's terrible. We identify ourselves as other people see us. And Jesus starts his ministry. It's like, I want you to know who you are. Your identity after your identity comes everything else that you do. You are my son. Period. Let's just stop there. You're in relationship with me. You're my daughter. I value. You have all the privileges of being my son and daughter. All that I have is available to you. You can live in my house. You can be in relationship with me. In some ways, he said, all that I have is at your disposal. Don't chase other things. Just stay inside your identity. Stay right. This is my son, whom I love. Listen to me. Some of you have had fathers or mothers who've put expectations on you, and you have never felt that safe place where you could just be you. And the Father says to Jesus, but I think he also says to us, you're my son, you're my daughter, and I love you. Not because of what you do, but because of who you are. Listen, there's two ways to kind of do the Christianity life, right, that we see in our world. One is we do things because we're trying to earn his love. And it looks, it can look good, and the filter's there. You're like, yeah, Jesus, I'm going to do a church for you. I hope that you love me. I'm going to do this for you. And the real way that we're designed to be is that you are who you are. You are a son. You're a daughter. You are loved. And now because we live in that love and we live in that identity, we are free to be all that he's designed us to be. So we live in the house of God and we live in that relationship and we start being free in who we are because that's who he designed us to be. And now our behavior, what we do, flows out of like his love, not trying to earn his love on the back end. It looks the same. Does that make sense to you? Like you could be doing the same things and you could be trying to earn his love or you could be living in his love. And it's two different things. Some of you may not be picturing it yet. Let me put it this way. There's a big difference in a husband-wife relationship from feeling like you have to do the dishes because they won't love you unless you do, and then, or doing the dishes because you love the one you're living with. The dishes get done both ways. But it's a whole different freedom. It's a whole different relationship. It's a whole different way of doing life when you can step in and be like, let's do dishes together. We're doing this. I want to do this for you because I love you, because I care for you. And I know that you love me. We're in a safe place. We serve each other out of that love. Does that clear it up a little bit? And that identity piece is so big in people pleasing. Because we all have an identity. We all have a way we want to be seen. And so that's where we start putting the filters on. We start putting like, hey, I want to be seen as this, so let's put that filter on. And sometimes it changes depending on what group you're in. Some of you are parents, and so you want to be seen as a good parent. And so among other good parents, you try to act a certain way. You want to yell, but you put the filter on. Please don't yell. Please don't yell. Please don't yell. Please don't say something I'm not supposed to say, because you want to be seen a certain way. At work, you're going to be different than you are at home because you put filters on. The dangerous part sometimes is we take the filters off from the people that we love, that we're close to, and they get the worst of us. And he said, live in your, don't take your identity by how other people see you. Because that's shifting sand. Put your identity in the way your relationship with him is. Put your roots there, and then you're free. Because you're loved. And the last phrase is, with you I am well pleased. He is pleased with the Son, not because he's done anything yet, because Jesus hadn't done a whole lot yet. He's pleased because of the relationship. Let's do life together. Let me give you the second thing that Jesus does. He lives in his identity, and then he goes to the Father to get clarity. All right, so he's trying to pick 12 disciples. Now there's lots of people around him. There's lots of people who probably wanted to be his disciple, but he's like, I got to pick 12. I guess it's the number. And so he climbs the mountain. He prays. He's like, all right, Father, there's a lot of people here. Who do you want me? Give me clarity. And he comes down the mountain. He calls 12 to him. Now understand this. There's other people there. You don't think some of them are like, Jesus, that's Peter. I'm smarter than Peter. But Levi, Matthew, come on, he collects taxes. He's a traitor to our country. I've been going to church my whole life. Do you not think he displeased somebody by not including them in the 12? And then do you don't think he displeased some people when he brought the 3 to him? Peter, James, and John, why are they the favorites? That's not right. Jesus, you're not supposed to show favorites. But see, what happens is Jesus gets before his Father and he gets clarity. So what clarity does, it allows you freedom to say yes and freedom to say no. You can say yes to what the Father wants you to do, which probably will be more of what you're designed for. And then you're also free to say no. Because there are a lot of good things calling out for your attention that may not be God things. That you may need to say no to. When you are away from the people, see what will happen. Let's take church for example. I'll go up to someone, and I try not to do this. I don't try to never feel pressure here. I hope to do something, but this is the way it can work. Hey, we have a need in the children's ministry, and I think you could fill that need. And so the person being taught you says, man, they're really guilting me into this now. I can't say no. I don't want to disappoint them. And so you'll do one of two things. You'll say, I'll pray about it, and never pray about it. You'll say, like, sure, sign me up, and then never get the paperwork back in. There's ways to get around it, rather than to say, that's not where I'm called. Like, there's freedom in your calling. There's freedom in what God designed you to be. This is what God has called me to be. And therefore, I can say yes, and I can say no without guilt. And that's just so you know, that's what the church is trying to be. We want you to be able to say no where you're supposed to say no. We want you to live in the center of God's will. Say yes to where you're supposed to. By the way, your yes sometimes are in places that you may not want to say yes to. You may say to the Father, am I supposed to do this? And you're like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. God, and you'll go back 5 times, say, I don't want to do that, God. I don't want to change diapers. That's not me. I gag when I have to breathe. I have to hold my nose, But sometimes God takes you on a journey of pruning, of growth, of in order to get you to where He needs to be. And it's not out of like people please. It's out of love that He wants that for you. He wants you to be, and so the question doesn't become, do I want to do it or not? The question is not whether someone else wants you to do it or not. The question becomes, Father, Dad, do you want me to do this or not? Listen, there's a lot of good people. People who are spiritual, people who come to church, who may try to steer you away from God's yes for your life. That's not a good idea. Financially, it's not a good idea. And you need to listen. You need to have other voices speaking into you. But if God's telling you to do something, sometimes you have to say no to those voices. I'm going to disappoint you in this because I'm choosing that way. I'm choosing to follow. So I hope that makes sense. There's a clarity of yes and no. And here's the hard part sometimes. Sometimes in that relationship with the Father and doing it His way, there are times you stand alone. Sometimes there's no one standing around you. Jesus is before Pilate, and no one's standing there with Him. He's alone. The disciples are all dispersed. He's trying to, in fact, sometimes He's trying to go a direction. The disciples are trying to go that direction, and He's almost dragging them along. Sometimes you are feeling alone, and it's okay. That's where Jesus stood. Sometimes the cultural expectations on us are so strong that we need to be able to go the other direction. In some ways, I think we should feel a little bit of pressure going against you in order to walk in the way God wants to walk. Because there is this idea that if you're a follower of Christ, it's probably not going to be like everyone else is doing it. You may have to stand alone. And even sometimes inside the church, you may have to stand alone. It's that thing. Don't do Christianity like the majority of people do it. Do it differently. Do it relationally. Do it with the Father. Don't be going down the path that everyone else goes just because that's what it's supposed to be. Seek Him, study Him, know Him, and then be like, you love me. I'm your child. You have plans for my life. You're working in my life. Let me step into that. I just want to be there. This pressure, I think, is something that many of us carry. Maybe you're afraid of letting someone down, and I just think it can become an idol in our life, and that there is more freedom that is being offered you today by trading in your people-pleasing for really God-pleasing. And it seems like, well, I'm just trading one thing for another. This is the thought, though. When you're seeking God's, God delighting in you, when you're seeking His path, His will, it is the most freeing place you can be. And you said this verse last week, and I think I'm going to say it today. He says, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, all who are tired of the weights, who are tired of the pressure, who are tired of these expectations. Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I, Jesus, will give you rest. And then he says this, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. He's saying, listen, trade the heavy burden. It's going to slow you down, and it's putting undue pressure on you. It's actually guilt-ridden stuff. Trade it in, because my yoke, what I want to do is I want to remove all the filters so that you can be you. You can be fully who you were designed to be. If you're a leader, you're going to be a leader. If you're a servant, you're going to be a servant. If you're a teacher, I fully want you to engage in teaching the way that your Father wants you to teach. Do all of that. Whatever you're designed to do, do it in submission to the Father, because there's freedom in that. Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, first I thank you that we can just gather here this morning like this. We were outside earlier and inside. That worship takes many different forms, many different places, but we get to gather together. As much as there is all this maybe regulation or expectations of mass, no mass, of seating, that there's freedom in you, that there is no wall between us and you. We can come to you as our Father, as the one who loves us, the one who died for us, the one who is working in our life. God, I pray for freedom in this room. There are some in here who are drowning underneath the weight of someone else's expectations. God, may they go to you. May you free them so that they can fully delight in you and enjoy you, get their leadership from you, say yes to where they can say yes, no to where they say no. God, I just pray for that freedom in our souls and our lives so that we can be all that you have designed us to be. In Jesus' name, amen.